What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. Back with yet another schedule preview and record prediction video. And today, we're going to be going through the 2020 Kentucky Wildcats. So Kentucky last year was a fairly decent team. I mean, they were by no means on top of the SEC, but I think surprised a lot of people in having one of the better rushing attacks last year. Terry Wilson went down with an injury, and they had to play Lynn Bowden, who was normally a wide receiver, at quarterback for most of the year. They ran a lot of Wildcat formations and stuff like that. But Lynn Bowden is leaving, and he's taking his production as a wide receiver with him, which hurts Kentucky. But Terry Wilson is going to be coming back this year, and the running back Smoke is going to be coming back, a big reason why Kentucky had one of the better rushing attacks in the SEC. So we're going to go ahead and see if Kentucky could be the Baylor of the SEC this year, or if Kentucky is overall going to underperform and underachieve. Here is the schedule for the Kentucky Wildcats. You'll look down there. Their 2019 record was 8-5, so they went 7-5 in the regular season. Didn't really place all that well in big games. Didn't give teams like Alabama or Georgia a good run for their money. But they still ended up making it to a bowl game, of course, with the Terry Wilson injury. That kind of surprised some people. Not me. I feel like Kentucky was pretty good. But they overall underperformed from where they were in 2018. Still made a bowl game, and they made the Belk Bowl against Virginia Tech, which was really, really fun game to watch, and Kentucky ended up winning that game. So that's how they got to 8-5. And then you look up there, their home games are going to be in the Kentucky blue, and the away games are going to be in white with the Kentucky blue background. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's look at the Kentucky schedule. First game of the season is going to be a home game against the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Now, Eastern Michigan's usually a fairly decent team in the MAC, but I really don't see Eastern Michigan being able to compete with the talent that Kentucky has. I feel like Eastern Michigan's defense could be able to keep up with Kentucky's offense for maybe a little bit. It's going to be a new system because Terry Wilson is coming back. It's not going to be what Kentucky offense was like last year, and they're probably going to end up being able to somewhat return to where they were in 2018 with Terry Wilson back at quarterback, and that's even being able to beat the Eagles pretty easily. Then they get a challenge early in the season, a road game against the Florida Gators. This one's going to be in the Swamp, and it's going to be really hard to win this game. Kentucky, as it just says, going to be breaking in a new system, and with Terry Wilson coming back, they're going to be playing more like they did in 2018. And this is the type of offense that Florida is just known to absolutely put a stop to. The dual threat, Florida is really, really good on defense, and their offense is returning Kyle Trask, and probably going to have their offensive line has some questions, but I think it has potential to be one of the better ones in the SEC this year. This one is overall, I don't think, going to be a good day for Kentucky, and a game that I think Florida can win pretty easily. Then a home game against the Kent State Golden Flashes, and this one also, like the Eastern Michigan game, should be no problem for the Kentucky Wildcats. Kent State has to play a lot of tough teams this year, and I feel like they're just going to be beat up. They have to play Alabama the next week, so they could be looking ahead to that game. I just see Kent State just cracking under the pressure of Kentucky, and Wildcats should win this one. Then a home game against the South Carolina Gamecocks, and this is probably going to end up being a big game for both of these teams. Kentucky may be looking ahead to Auburn the next week, and South Carolina's overall just got games all over the schedule that really could trip them up. And this game is going to be hard for South Carolina to win, and I feel like it's going to be a really fought-out, competitive game. South Carolina is returning their quarterback, Ryan Helinski, and he seems to be the favorite. And South Carolina's got a lot of questions, but overall these two teams match up fairly well with each other. I just feel like Kentucky is overall the more talented team, and they are playing at home, so I'm going to give Kentucky the win here against the Gamecocks. Then a road game against the Auburn Tigers. So Auburn is a team that is returning a lot of young talent. Quarterback Bo Nix is coming back. Wide receiver Seth Williams is coming back. Running back Jarvis Willow is in the transfer portal, but has not gone anywhere yet. But overall, Auburn is just the absolute way more talented team in this game. I feel like Kentucky really has no – maybe they can hang with them for a quarter, but overall I just see Auburn pulling away at the end of this one, and the Tigers getting the win. Then a home game against Eastern Illinois, I believe, and again, FCS team. All the SEC teams play an FCS team in Kentucky. This is good. It's going to be an easy win. Then they get a home game against the Vanderbilt Commodores, and this one should also be a fairly easy win for Kentucky. So they get a couple of break games after the Auburn game and before what possibly could be a tricky game on the road against Missouri. So Missouri was a team that would have made a bowl game last year, but because of the postseason ban, they did not make a bowl game last year. And I feel like Missouri maybe could be okay this year, but they're losing a lot. And Sean Robinson is going to be coming back there at quarterback, the transfer. And I don't see how he can elevate this Missouri program to the next level quite yet. I don't think he's going to be like the next Drew Lock or anything. It could be a tricky game for Kentucky, but I feel like they're going to be able to edge out the Missouri Tigers. Then they get a bye week, and this is, in my opinion, a perfect place for a bye week. It's in the middle of the season, which is always good, or fairly in the middle of the season, after a road game and before a really tricky road game, which is always nice. And yes, maybe you could have had it before your Auburn game, but you definitely don't want it before the Georgia game. That's just way too late in the season. So in my opinion, this is an absolutely perfect place for a bye week, in which then they have to play Tennessee. This game, to me, is going to be so close. Tennessee is going to be better this year as well, returning their quarterback, Jarrett Guarantano. But, guys, on the outside, their wide receivers, they need help. Juwan Jennings is going to be leaving, and lots of other guys. I believe I saw that Tennessee is losing 100-plus catches last year, which is absolutely crazy. So their wide receiver game definitely needs help. But overall, Tennessee has got the defensive pieces in place to compete with a lot of good teams in the SEC, and I feel like that's where this game is going to come down to. It's going to be Kentucky's offense versus Tennessee's defense, and whichever one can just stop the other one better. If Kentucky can score more points, or if Tennessee can get more stops, that's really what's going to decide this game for me. And overall, I just think the home field advantage maybe favors Tennessee a little bit, but I definitely could see either side winning this game. Then a home game against Mississippi State. So Mississippi State is getting a new head coach and a new quarterback. So two completely new systems at Mississippi State. Their head coach is Mike Leach. He came over from Washington State and is bringing the air raid offense, or so we all assume, with him, and bringing in transfer quarterback KJ Costello, who I think we've all forgotten how well KJ Costello really can throw the ball. He's coming over from Stanford, so Pac-12 coach and the Pac-12 quarterback. It should work out pretty well for the Mississippi State Bulldogs, but their defense is where I have a lot of questions for the Bulldogs, and it's where I think Kentucky's offense is going to be able to show out in this game. I think it's going to be an offensive shootout type game, but I think Kentucky's defense gets enough stops and Kentucky's able to win the game. Then Kentucky's last two games of the season are really tricky ones. They get a home game against the Georgia Bulldogs, which it helps that it's at home and possibly could be a tricky game for the Georgia Bulldogs. But I see no means why Georgia would be looking ahead the next week to Georgia Tech. Yes, it's a rivalry game, and Georgia Tech is going to improve this year, but still overall Georgia Tech nowhere near the level that Georgia is at right now. So Kentucky is going to need to play at their A game if they want to win this one. And with Georgia getting transfer quarterback Jamie Newman, we all thought Georgia was going to be really good. And now they're getting transfer quarterback JT Daniels. And with the two quarterback system and what Kirby Smart is capable of, I just see the Bulldogs being able to come into Lexington and get an enormous victory against the Wildcats. Then a road game, the final game of the season against the Louisville Cardinals. So I did Louisville earlier this week, and this game for me really did or could have gone either way. I feel like Louisville is the slightly more talented team on the offensive side. They just have better wide receivers, and their running game is still pretty good, like Kentucky's in. But Kentucky needs to find a wide receiver, and I feel like this could be an offensive shootout type game. And this game really could go either way. It's a rivalry game, and Kentucky just absolutely smashed Louisville last year, and I do not think it is going to be that type of game this year. Kentucky has to go play Louisville on the road. It's going to be a totally different environment, and I feel like this game could go either way. And really, I feel like this is going to be an absolutely fantastic game to watch. I think I'm going to slightly lean towards Louisville just because it is a home field game, and I feel like Louisville has got absolutely everything figured out by this point. Kentucky probably does as well, and overall, when it boils down to it, Louisville to me is the more talented team. All right, so after everything has been said and considered, I have the Kentucky Wildcats going 7-5. I have them doing exactly what they did last year, and I know I said Kentucky has the potential to be the Baylor of the SEC this year, but with their schedule, I don't see it. They have to go on the road to play Florida, which they would have had to play Florida anyway. It's a rivalry game, but their draw from the other side and having to go on the road to play Auburn is not going to be fun for Kentucky. I don't see them winning that one. Georgia's going to be good this year. I don't see them winning that one. And then I think they lose both too, on the road at Tennessee and on the road at Louisville. Maybe if they were to play one game at home, I could see them winning it, but all of their big games on the road, I could see them losing. And maybe even if they can pull off a miraculous upset against one of these teams, I still feel like they drop a game somewhere, whether Mississippi State gets you. Or I just feel like Kentucky's got a lot to figure out this year, and that's why I have them at 7-5. All right, so now the record range for Kentucky, you know what this is. I take this team's worst-case scenario along with their best-case scenario. It's where I expect them to be this season. And for the worst-case scenario, I have Kentucky at 5-7. Like I just said, they have a lot of tricky road games on the road at Florida, on the road at Auburn, on the road at Tennessee, and on the road at Louisville. The only road game that I think is that Kentucky could easily win is on the road at Missouri, and all their other road games are going to be really hard. But I definitely also could see them losing on the road to Missouri, and Georgia's going to be no pushover. As I said, South Carolina is going to be a very important game. Mississippi State is going to be better this year with the air raid offense, and that's going to be a shootout. This Kentucky's schedule is really interesting because, like I said, lots of tricky road games, but their home games are not that easy either. And if Kentucky just can't get their stuff together, and Lynn Bowden is the wide receiver that they're just missing, and with him being gone, if Kentucky just can't find a wide receiver to replace him, they could go 5-7, and I think that's their absolute worst-case scenario. Then their absolute best-case scenario for me is 9-3. Like I said, a lot of tricky road games, and I maybe could see them winning one or two of them. But 9-3, I feel like is going to be very good for this Kentucky team and the schedule that they have. Again, I think losing Lynn Bowden is big, but Kentucky still has a lot of great talent like Terry Wilson and their running back Smoke, and their defense probably has a lot of things figured out late in the season. I don't think they're going to be able to beat Florida, but maybe they could go on the road and shock Auburn. I definitely think they can win on the road at Tennessee, and I definitely think they can win on the road at Louisville. So 9-3 is my absolute worst-case scenario for the Kentucky Wildcats. If they can just get stuff figured out on defense, and I feel like even if they can keep Florida a close one-possession game, the teams need to worry about Kentucky, and Kentucky definitely could be this year's Baylor of the SEC. But my current prediction for the 2020 Kentucky Wildcats is 7-5. So that's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the 2020 Kentucky Wildcats. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you are brand new to the channel or has enjoyed my content. And if you haven't done so already, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Kentucky Wildcats. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard with Tailgate Harder. I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.